Right now, we're going to Minnesota, get reaction from out there, because I got to be honest, this has been one of the more polarizing discussions. The people on the side. First off, you remember Bradford wanted to be traded.
Yes, he was all upset because they had drafted Carson Wentz. He had his little hissy fit. He went away, and then he came back.
So how is it being received in Minnesota? ESPN.com, NFL Nation Vikings reporter Ben Goessling joins us with that right now on the Sports Bash. So how, number one, I guess you're not surprised, right? The Vikings needed a quarterback. They got a quarterback. Were you surprised at the level of quarterback and what they gave up?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think anytime you give up a first-round pick, it's somewhat surprising. But, I mean, the logic of it makes sense because this is a team that feels like it has a chance to win right now. I mean, if you were saying, we just need another guy in here that's going to help us get through, I mean, you probably don't give up a first-round pick for that. But the fact that they wanted somebody that was going to be able to help them continue their season and keep the Super Bowl championship hopes alive that they have, I get that part of it. And whether Sam Bradford is that guy, you know, you guys have seen him. I don't know that he is, but this is not an offense that is built on having to have somebody throw it 40 times a game. I think they feel like if he can come in and give them something close to what Teddy Bridgewater was going to give them, they'll still be competitive. So in the sense of that they feel like they have a chance to win now and have a shot to go for it, especially when you have a 31-year-old running back, it makes sense from that perspective.
Ben, so at this point, I mean, because Bradford, it's like, okay, this guy was the number one pick. He seems like he's very criticized. You know, the money he has made, I think, really makes him a target. Then he wanted to be traded, so he became an unpopular figure here. Is he being embraced? Is this a popular move? Was he a popular pickup for me? I know they needed a quarterback, but was it like, yes, we got Sam Bradford, or, ugh, we needed a quarterback, but we got Sam Bradford?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think there are certainly some Vikings fans that want to believe this is going to work and want to believe that this is going to turn into the thing that helps them keep their season on track. So you convince yourself that Sam Bradford is going to do that. And I think certainly he was better than a lot of the options they were staring at. I mean, you look at, you know, a guy like, whether it's Mark Sanchez or Josh McCown or Mike Glennon, I mean, some of the other names that would come up. There was a rumor here last week that they were talking to Michael Vick, which they weren't. But, you know, I mean, that tells you kind of what the rest of the field was like. So, I mean, there's some optimism there, but there's also people that know Sam Bradford for what he is and what he's been. And I don't think anybody is sitting here saying this guy is, you know, started grading the Lombardi Trophy because this guy has got it done for us. I think the feeling is, if you're confident in this team, it's because it's not a team that's built to have to rely on a quarterback. They have a great defense. They have Adrian Peterson. They feel like they upgraded the skill position talent around the quarterback, and they hope their offensive line is better. So there's enough other stuff that if you have a steady hand or a guy that can make some contributions as a quarterback, I think they still feel like they have enough. So, I mean, it's kind of mixed, I guess, but and people feel like they give up a lot. But
yeah,
if it all works out, you know, the opinion will change accordingly.
Ben Goessling, ESPN.com, NFL Nation covers the Vikings. See, yeah, I think they gave up a lot. I understand why they did it. I'm one of those guys who felt, look, I liked Bridgewater, but that offense just didn't ask him to be dynamic. I thought they were a playoff team with Hill. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I did, but here's the problem. If Sean Hill gets hurt, and Sean Hill has never played a full season, they did not have another quarterback on their roster who'd ever thrown a pass in an NFL game. And what's more, Sean Hill is 36 years old, and you probably need a guy that you can count on next year, too. I mean, that was a big part of why they made this deal. Rick Spielman said that over the weekend. The fact that Sam Bradford is signed through 2017 means that you can go into next season not having to count on Teddy Bridgewater being ready right away. If he's still having issues in his recovery, or if it just takes as long as it certainly looks like it could, you don't have to go in with your fingers crossed saying, well, if he's fine, then we'll be okay. You at least have another option in the event that the rehab takes a while. So that part of it, yeah, I mean, yes, I think they could have been a playoff team still with Sean Hill, but the other piece of it is that you needed another option that you could trust, and you also need the guy for next year.
Ben, so does Hill start week one, or do they go right to Bradford?
Well, they are certainly doing everything they can to make that a confusing question. They're splitting first-team reps this week. They released the first depth chart today with Sean Hill at the top of it, but they're going so far as to not put one of those two quarterbacks at the podium tomorrow. They're both talking at the same time in the locker room. My sense is the plan going into the week was Sean Hill probably starts if Sam Bradford has trouble picking everything up in time. But I don't know that you go through all of this work if you are not hoping that Sam Bradford starts. I think the fact that you're splitting first-team reps, that you're trying to make this seem like an open question. I mean, yes, there's some element of gamesmanship there, but I do think that if you're going through all this work, you are on some level hoping that Sam Bradford picks things up to the point where he can start on Sunday.
Right. The gamesmanship makes sense that they want to try and provide any confusion they can to their opponent and delay as much as possible. So does Bradford seem like he's happy with this move, knowing that he has to be traded this offseason?
Well, I think he was certainly surprised by it. I don't know that he was doing cartwheels over it, but I mean, it's been quite an offseason for Sam Bradford. He signed that contract, and then all of a sudden you're on the outs when they go and give up a punch to get Carson Wentz. So, I mean, I think the fact that he is out of there probably is a good thing, but now you got to learn a new offense 8 days before the season, and you might not be the starter right away. So, I mean, all of it is kind of a whirlwind for him, but I think at the end, you look at it, he's got a better supporting cast here than he probably has ever had, and he has a chance to possibly be the quarterback on a playoff team, which he has not been before. So all of that in the end, I think if it works out the way the Vikings hope it does, probably is a good thing for Sam Bradford.
Ben Goessling, ESPN.com, NFL Nation covers the Vikings. A lot of discussion about what they gave up. Do you think that there would have been or there was a better deal, or was this the best case scenario for Minnesota?
Well, there's certainly probably deals where they could have given up a little bit less. But, I mean, Rick Spielman talked about it, how there were a lot of teams asking for them to give up one of their core young players. They have been very aggressive in the first round of the draft the last few years to try to accumulate a foundation of young players. And there were teams that Rick Spielman said were asking for them to give up one of those guys, whether it's Anthony Barr or Trey Waynes. I'm not sure the other names who would have been. I can't imagine anybody was silly enough to ask for Harrison Smith. But, I mean, some of those young guys, Daniil Hunter, I'm sure was a name that came up. A lot of these guys that they liked, they didn't want to give up. So, I mean, there were probably deals that they thought were more ridiculous. There were probably deals that they thought were cheaper.
Yeah.
Probably deals that were cheaper. But I think the hope in getting a guy that could start and then give you a solid, reliable option next year, too, there probably weren't a lot of those to pick from.
My initial reaction to when I saw this was, I wonder if they called and asked for Bradford right away, and did the Eagles counter and say, well, would you take Chase Daniel for a later pick? Because he's making some decent money, and he signed for a couple of years, and he kind of fits what you said. Like, he's a backup, but he could, if Hill got hurt, he could, or was it, hey, what do you want for Sam Bradford? Like, I wonder if they went right to Bradford.
Well, Peter King had written something earlier this week that suggested they talked to the Eagles about a quarterback during the offseason. Now, I would expect that probably was Nick Foles at the time, because Nick Foles was sitting there. He was a guy the Vikings were interested in signing before the Rams cut him. I mean, there were some discussions there, I think, and then whether it was Chase Daniel later on or what it was, I'm not exactly sure. I can't imagine they were asking for Bradford at that point. But I think things picked up last week when Rick Spielman realized we have to go get a guy that can play this year and possibly next year. And then at that point, the number of guys that fit that bill, that are young enough, that have got enough experience as a starter, but are available before the season, probably aren't very many. I mean, most teams are not looking to unload their quarterback before the season. So at that point, you're at a pretty short list with a pretty short timetable to work at, and that's why the price was what it was. They had to pay a premium, and they did it.
And who's Sam going to throw to out there? Because I look at the list of receivers and I look at the depth of the Vikings, and I'm not sure any of them scream future Hall of Famer at this point.
No, none of them do. I mean, you have Stephon Diggs, second-year receiver that they like. I mean, I think that works better when you have some time to get to know these guys. I mean, they do not have the go up and get it type guy that, Julio Jones, AJ Green, Odell Beckham, and those types of players are not here that you can just say, okay, I can find this guy and throw it to him. They don't have that guy. So that does make it difficult. The thing you do have is the guy you can lean on is lining up behind you. I mean, the fact that they have Adrian Peterson should make this easier in the sense that you can hand him the ball a lot and have him take a big chunk of the game plan, probably helps with the fact that they don't have that dynamic go-to receiver. You are going to need guys that can get open at some point. Stephon Diggs, Charles Johnson, they have a couple other guys. They obviously drafted Laquan Treadwell in the first round this year. But I think in the early going, especially if Sam Bradford is a starter, you're going to see a lot of Adrian Peterson.
Looking at the Vikings side of things, of the Sam Bradford trade, we'll see how that all works out. Then when they obviously don't know if he'll start this week or not, but expectations still high in Minnesota. Ben Goessling from ESPN.com's NFL Nation covering the Vikings.
Hey, Ben, get a Juicy Lucy for us and ship it out, okay?
I will try to do that. Thanks, guys. I'll
Check
send you
it.
that for a Pat's cheesesteak.
You got it. Ben Goessling from ESPN's
Very wise
NFL
comment.
Nation.